Hello and welcome to the webinar. I am your host, Ryan Faluna, and I am here with Jonathan Mallard, our Benzinga Pro onboarding specialist. Jonathan, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Ryan. Thanks for letting me join you today.
No problem. I am super excited for today. I am really glad that you joined us. We are going to cover a ton of awesome stuff today. I literally can't get over how excited I am. So I apologize if I'm a little over the top, but just trying to temper all of that. So
You guys don't even know. You don't even know. This is going to be awesome.
This is going to be great. So Jonathan and I are often in discussions regarding new users to the platform and what it is that they're looking for. I talk to a lot of the paying customers. Jonathan talks to every single new customer, and we pool what we hear from people, and we try to come up with demonstrations and tutorials on how you can easily find some of the information that you're looking for. One of the questions that Jonathan and I get all of the time is about low float stocks. So today we're going to begin our webinar by discussing how you can find low float stocks, what exactly a low float stock is, and then some pros and cons of low float stocks. One of the things that I've discovered in my trading career is that while low floats can absolutely be appealing, sometimes if you don't know what it is that you're trading, you can actually get hurt. And our goal here is to stop you from getting hurt. There absolutely is a way where you can, or low float stocks are absolutely a vehicle in which you can make some really, really healthy profits, but that doesn't come without risk. And we're going to tell that too. We're going to show you that today. And we're going to show you how to actually find these stocks should you want to take that risk on. So first of all, let's start with how you can actually find a list of low float stocks. And in order to do that, the easiest way is to use the screener. So what I'm going to do, I've got a blank workspace here for Benzinga Pro. What I'm going to do is I'm going to click just the screener to load that on. And Jonathan, I'm actually going to, I think we're okay. I'm going to move us to about the middle of the screen here. All right, so this is what you're going to get when we talk about a default screener or just the regular run-of-the-mill screener. And I want to explain how this tool works because there's some confusion about that as well. Along the top here, these are some presets for the information that you're going to display in the results list. So we have it selected on overview, and that's going to give us an overview of the different stocks in the results list. You can see here we don't have any filters, so we're getting an entire breadth of the actual market. And you can see we've got market cap, price, percent change, etc. All of the things that you're accustomed to seeing. If you click on some of these other presets, this will actually change the different columns that you have in the bottom. So this is actually not going to do any screening for you. This is just going to present information for you. And we have some presets here, but all of these columns are customizable, every one of them. You can either use the columns button over here on the right-hand side. Let me move this out of the way again. You can bring up an actual column selector. You can search for it. So we're going to do float here. So I just started typing in the word float, and it actually filtered out the different filters that don't meet that criteria. So it can be very, very easy to find. The other thing that the screener is going to allow you to do is you'll see that right beneath these presets, we also have a filters category. And what you're looking at here, or by default, is the basic filters. These are the symbols, market cap, price, just some of the basic information. We also have other ones like fundamental and technical. The active will show you any filters that you put on. So if you forget which filter you put on, you can simply click active and it will show you all of the different filters and the parameters that you've selected. I actually like to use the all because this will show us every filter that we have available to us, and this actually makes it a little bit easier for me to find them and actually think, okay, well, what is it that I want to see? So in our example here, what we're going to do is we're going to add float. And you can see it here in the list. All right, so just in the list of all of these filters, float and actually percent float is one of them. What we're going to use for today is actually float, the raw float numbers. And what float is basically the amount of shares that are out there available to be traded. And the reason that this is important is because when a float is low, there's often a couple of byproducts. One of which is there can be a large spread between the bid price and the ask price. And this is important because normally if you look at a stock that's trading, like for example, if you were to look at Apple right now, although the stock is in the 300 handle, there's still probably only a couple of cents between the bid and the ask. Someone might be bidding $300.50. Someone might be bidding $300.51. So it's very easy to get the price that you actually see because the spread is so tight. Additionally, because Apple is so highly traded and has so many shares, in fact, let's go ahead and add float here. Since Apple happens to be on this list here, I'm just going to go ahead and add the float. You can see Apple's float is 4.38 billion shares. That's a ton, right? So you're not going to have any trouble if you want to buy 1,000 shares, 10,000 shares, even 100,000 shares. You're not going to have much trouble doing that. If the stock is actually a low float, and the typical measure for a low float is under 10 million shares, but we can actually dig in a little bit deeper, and we're going to here, it's much harder to actually buy up that position because you're taking more of what's actually available there. So in addition to the spread being wide, the other thing is that if there's a whole lot of buying interest, even if there's not that much buying interest, it can actually move the price. And this is one of the reasons why they're sought after, because you can have a stock that's just $1 or a couple of dollars that's low float move 100, 200, 300, even 1,000% in a session, because the amount of shares that are available, there just isn't that many. And the more and more eyeballs that pile in, the more and more that this stock is actually trading. So obviously, when you start to hear 300 and 400% gain, that's really, really exciting. But it's important to also realize that you could also have quite a bit of losses. And while you're not going to have 300% losses, you're not going to lose more than your initial investment. The stock can absolutely get cut in half over the course of one session or worse. So if you're going to trade these things, it's important to know exactly what it is that you're trading, and it's important to manage your position size accordingly. If you've ever seen any other webinar or instructional video with me before, you've probably heard me pound on the table and say, position sizing and risk management are two of the most important things in trading. And that is even more true when you're trading stocks that have low float. So let's get into some of these examples here. The first thing that you'll notice I actually hovered over the float category in this filter in the screener, and there's a little button on the right-hand side above the actual filter box. And this actually may be difficult for you to see, but what this is a plus symbol inside of a circle. And if you click on that, you can see that will automatically add the column to the table. So you don't actually have to search for it in the column button. You can actually just add it right from the filters menu here. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I'm also going to move this float over next to market cap. Oh, and I'm sorry, I'm going to go to the overview. I'm going to add it again because I added it on the wrong one. And then I'm going to move this over to market cap so I can actually see it right next to the price, just so it's right in front there for me. Now, one of the other things that you can do here is when you actually apply your filter, we have presets available to you in the actual menu right now. So if you're unsure what it is that you want to do, you can actually play around with several of these presets. Now, as I had mentioned, a typical low float stock is considered anything that has less than 10 million shares available in the actual float. And so you could just select under 10 million, but I'm going to make it a little bit more specific. I'm actually going to enter in my own custom value. So despite us having a whole bunch of different options for you, there's also a custom field, which will allow you to put in any value that you want. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to see stocks that have a low float. So I'm going to do 0 to 3 million. And well, I could type in 3 and then 6 zeros in here. You can also use the abbreviation. So I'm going to use a capital M to abbreviate million. The same thing can be done with billion. So I'm going to go ahead and put 3M in the upper boundary and then press enter. And you'll see here that it'll tell you once you've entered that exactly what's happening. We are now filtering for float less than 3 million. And because I've added the float column to my results list, I can actually now sort this. So you can see here that Berkshire Hathaway Class A shares are at the top of the list. Well, that's great, but they cost $261,000 per share. This is not something that I'm going to trade. What I would like to do is I actually would like to click on float, and this will allow me to then sort it ascending and descending. So right here, now I'm seeing all of these stocks that have low float. A lot of these, just looking at the tickers here, a lot of these look familiar to me. These are stocks that I've traded before or that I've seen being talked about or traded by other traders. So right here now, we can actually see all of these stocks that have low float. And you can actually click on any one of these to load it up into the details tool. In the details tool, there are several things that you can do here. First of all, I want to point out that in this little key data section, over here on the right, you'll see the float number. All right, so this is the actual float, and these are updated, I believe, quarterly when the company releases their report about that. So you can also find this number on the key data tab. It's actually right under the shares outstanding tab. The other thing that you can do here from a details tool, and this is actually some of the things that we're going to do, is you can actually look at a chart of these particular stocks. So the charts here are actually in real time, and you can actually see what type of trading action this stock has had. So here we go. I'm on a daily chart here, and you can actually see how much this thing has moved over the past couple of months. All right. Now, this is going to be helpful for when you're actually planning your trade, but we're not quite there yet. So let me expand this a little bit, and let's go back to our example. Oh, looks like I misclicked there. Sorry about that. So in our example here, we're seeing stocks. We've already filtered it by the float, but I also want to put some other filters on here. The first one that I want to put on here is actually a price filter, because I don't necessarily, one of the things that's appealing about low floats is you can actually effectively trade these with a smaller account balance. And so what I want to do is I actually want to put a price parameter on here. And we do have some presets in here as well. I'm just going to select one of those. I'm going to select 1 to 5 this time. Now, all I'm seeing are stocks that have under 3 million float and are priced between $1 and $5. And you can see here that the price is actually already one of the columns. So if you wanted to sort by that column, you can do that as well. In fact, you can sort by any one of these columns. So now that I've actually narrowed down my list of stocks here, now I actually want to start reviewing and seeing, are any of these things that I actually want to trade on? So let me go ahead and expand the chart here a little bit. Hopefully I'll grab this correctly this time. There we go. And now we can actually just click on some of these stocks. So you'll notice that I had Hi-Ho there the first time. It's right here in the list as well. So you can see that these stocks can make some huge moves. All right, so huge moves. At one point, this stock was $86. It's now down at $4. And so it would be great if you could buy one of these at $4 and have it trade up to $80. But if we knew how to do that all the time, all of us would be millionaires. It's not that easy. And the other thing is like I was mentioning, these stocks can actually move around and be quite volatile because of the actual share structure. So one of the things that you can do here, if you have a particular trading style or a particular chart pattern that you're looking for, you can very quickly filter your list to find low floats, then compare the chart and see if you recognize any of these charting patterns. One of the things that I want to say about this is that you have to be very, very careful, because some of the traditional trading strategies might not work or might not work as well on a stock that has a low float. And the reason is because the price can actually change so rapidly or so violently. And there also might not be a lot of entry position. There might not be a lot of shares available for people to buy when a stock is, for example, resting at a moving average. That would normally be support or resistance. So you can absolutely apply your indicators to this. Again, we've got the chart here in the details tool, so I can just go ahead and actually add an exponential moving average, for example. The default is going to be 9. And I can actually change this. Another popular exponential moving average is the 200 EMA. So what I did is I simply changed the length from 9 to 200, and now I have a little prettier line here. And so, and then the other thing I'm going to do just to make this a little bit easier to see is I'm going to change the style. I'm going to make it thick and make it yellow so that it stands out a little bit more. So right here, one of the things that you can do is you can actually use any one of these indicators. Perhaps in this particular case, I just added it on here, but perhaps this stock is actually closer. Let me see if I can click on another one, find another one here. That might be a good example. All right, you can see all of the stocks that I've clicked on so far, they're all under their 200 EMA. So that should just go to show you that while this can actually be very, very appealing, it's not necessarily going to work all the time. You really, really want to protect yourself. Here's a great example. Back on, it looks like April 9th, Neuro, this stock has been around for quite a bit here, actually traded up from 116 to 147 in one session. And then over the next few sessions, I'm guessing, without reviewing the news, I'm just guessing that this was coronavirus related, because Neuro, I believe, is a biotech stock. This thing was just an absolute rocket. This here looks like on this particular candle, we opened at 159, the low was 147, but the high was 230. So we're having enormous moves in this stock in the course of one day. And actually, if you held on to this for several days, it looks like you go from a 113 handle. At one point, this was all the way up to, let's see, we're in the way here, $6. All right, so 600% gain on one of these low float stocks. And it looked like it took 2 days to do this. But this actually brings up another good point which is what I was trying to explain earlier. You have this enormous violent run that can be very, very profitable. But if you're chasing this candle, if you're trying to get in here, or if you were waiting for this to reclaim and then breach the 200-day exponential moving average, this stock pulled back in the same day. So if I hover over this candle, we had an open price of 216, we had a low of 205, but we had a high of 620. The stock closed at $3. So the stock opened at 216, traded all the way up to over 6, but then closed at 3. That is an incredibly volatile session. And if you don't have all of your I's dotted and all of your T's crossed, I'm telling you from experience that the emotional roller coaster that this thing would be, it can be absolutely crazy. Now, if you're making a whole bunch of money, maybe you're going to be happy and smiling and dancing and doing all of that. But we would be remiss if we did not share the cons along with some of the pros. So remember, these stocks can move. They can move quite a bit, but they can also move against you in the same fashion. So just be sure to protect yourself. Now, in this particular case,
could I ask a question there,
Yeah,
Ryan?
go ahead. Go ahead.
And feel free to save this for later on in the presentation. But I know what many people are probably asking is, all right, so how do I cross my T's and dot my I's? How do I basically mitigate my risk as well as possible if I do want to play in this arena?
That is a great question. And I'm really glad that you asked that. And we should actually address that right now, because that's actually very, very important. The easiest way to be prepared for trading low float stocks is having your position size figured out. And that is to say that although this stock is only $2, it could be very enticing. This makes you want to buy maybe 1,000 or a couple thousand shares, depending on how much money you have available for trading. Maybe that's not the best idea. Maybe if you normally put in $2,000 per position, let's say $2,000 was 2% of your account balance. That's a very widely used conservative way of using your capital in an effective manner and not using too much of it, so that if one of these trades actually goes against you, you don't wipe yourself out. If you're trading with 30% of your account balance and you have a bad day, it can be very, very difficult to recover from that. And remember, let's say, for example, you have an account that's worth $10,000 and you lose $5,000 of that. You lose 50%. In order to just get back to even, now you actually have to have 100% in gains. So if you lose 50% of your account at $10,000 and you go to $5,000, in order to get back to where you started, you now need to have 100% gains on your account. So you really, really want to be careful. You really, really want to make sure that your position sizing is correct. And that actually leads into the second aspect of this. Because these stocks are so thinly traded, and because the spread can be wide, the availability of shares might not be there, if you actually reduce your position size, you're going to have a better chance of getting filled. If I'm buying Neuro here and I'm going to say, you know what, I'm going to get 1,000 shares. I'm going to spend $2,000 and $2,060 in order to get this position filled. And my trading plan allows me for 10% to the downside. So I've used $2,000 of capital, and I'm only willing to risk $200 of downside. $200 of downside is only going to be a couple of cents. And as we just showed you here, this thing can actually move rapidly and very, very quickly over the course of a particular session. So if you actually reduce your position size, so instead of buying 1,000 shares, let's say I bought 500 shares, I can actually now increase my stop. I can actually say, you know what, I can allow for this stock to trade down a little bit more. It's not going to hurt me as much because I reduced how much cash at risk I have in this position. Sometimes you'll hear traders also in the chat room mention CAR in caps. CAR is cash at risk. So one of the big rules in being a successful trader is you always want to protect your capital. No matter what the setup is, no matter what the trade plan is, protect your capital. Because if you've got money to trade, then the next day you can get right back at it. If you don't protect your capital and you end up losing a whole bunch of it, not only are you not going to be able to trade, but you might have some very difficult questions to answer. And obviously, you don't want to go through that. So, Jonathan, that's a great question. You definitely want to limit your position size. And if you're normally trading a specific amount, maybe trade a little bit less than that, knowing that, yeah, sure, this thing could run a whole bunch, but if it runs 200%, that's still really good profit. If you are normally putting $1,000 in a position, and then instead of putting 1,000 in, you put 500 in, but the stock trades up 100%, you just doubled your investment. So again, I know it's enticing, but staying safe is almost more important. And there are still large gains to be had, even if you reduce your position size a little bit. The other thing that I will say is that be very, very careful about placing a stop loss order, especially if it's a stop limit order. Because one of the things that can happen here is, let's say you did buy the Neuro here as it crossed the 200 EMA. All right, so let's say you got filled at 390. All right, and this stock actually trades up to 6. If you're able to get out, great. Those are great gains. But if it starts to trade up and you put in a stop loss order, or let's say you put in a stop loss order right when you place the trade, you're trying to follow your trade plan. You've got a specific stop. You place it right when you place your trade. You buy in at 390. You say, you know what? I'm willing to risk 40 cents, and you put your stop at 350. When this stock is coming back in, it's quite possible that the price could be in the 370 range, and then with a huge sale, actually drop the price to 330. Now what happens is your stop is actually triggered and your order is placed. But because you placed a stop limit order, your order is placed at 350. Well, the price is at 330. That limit order is not going to get filled. And unless that stock makes another run back up, that limit order may never get filled. So you want to be very careful, and you want to have a plan going into this. And a plan consists of knowing what you're trading, how much cash at risk you're willing to put into each position, and then the ability or the plan in order to get out in case the trade goes against you. It's quite easy for people to see that they're up several $100s, take their gain, and move on to the next one. That's the easy part of trading. The hard part of trading is when things are going against you. What do? Do I hold on to this and wait for this to come back? Do I get out and just take my loss and move on? What do I do? And the answer is different for every single person, because it has to do with how much you're actually willing to risk and all of that. So there's no answer that I can give you that says this is how you're going to do it and you're going to be successful. You're going to have to feel that out. And low floats are intriguing because people with low account balances can actually trade some of these stocks. With a couple of clicks of a mouse, we just found stocks that have low float. We've got 73 stocks here that are low float and priced between $1 and $5. Almost anybody can trade this, even if you have 100 shares. Again, if you buy 100 shares of a $300 stock and it trades up 100%, you just doubled your investment. Quite powerful. But again, if you bought at 6 and it trades down to 2, you just lost quite a bit of your investment. So it can go both ways, and that's really all I'm trying to emphasize. So, Jonathan,
thanks, Ryan. Thank you.
A long-winded answer. I see you answering questions in the chat here. I've just been kind of going because I'm so excited. Is there anything that I missed that we should circle back on?
There's a couple good questions in regards to the screener, and then we can handle the other questions as we hit some other tools here.
Okay.
Just very briefly here, the screener is set to manually refresh with that circle arrow button in the upper right corner. You can set it to automatically refresh every 10 seconds or every minute if you set it to that. So So, but if you don't select one of those, it's a manual refresh there. And then another question about saving screener settings. So we do have plans to have like preset settings that you can save and that type of thing. But for right now, it simply saves within the workspace. So if you wanted to have multiple settings, then you would need to have multiple screener tools that are saved in workspaces. Correct, Ryan?
That is correct. So to demonstrate exactly what you're talking about, on this particular workspace, you can see that I have the price and the float filter. Let's click on active. I've got the price and the float filter added here. I have another tab at the top that says screener, and this is the screener that I normally use here. So here we go. I have another one here, and in this case, I only have one active. It's the same low float, go figure. It's the same low float filter that we were just talking about. But these two are different instances of this tool, and they will save the indicators that I have on here. They will even save it through a refresh. So even if I refresh the platform here, this filter will still be applied to this screener. But there's no like menu yet where you can actually save, okay, I want a low float scan, save it here, and I want to, that's not available yet, but that is coming. So that's actually a great question. I'm glad that that got asked, because that's definitely something that we're planning on doing.
Additionally, I figured this would go well with showing them where to save an entire layout. So, you can save these individual filter settings on any of the tools. And if you're worried about accidentally deleting something, or if you change something, you want to revert to those settings, you can click on those three dots in the far upper right corner of the entire platform, and then click on layouts. And there's two sections. There's a saved section, and then underneath that is the recent section. Under recent, you'll see there's that blue box that says current. Now, that's going to save all of your workspaces with all of the associated tools and filters in one saved setting. So to say that, you would just click on the yellow save button on the right-hand side, and then it'll show up in the save section, and you can name it. Once you name it, it's automatically saved. You don't have to do anything else unless you want to load those settings, in which case you just come back to this area and then click on the load button, and it'll refresh the entire web page for you.
That's exactly right, Jonathan. So just to summarize that, there are a couple of things that are happening. Anytime that you make adjustments to any of the tools, not just the screener, but any of the tools in Pro, your settings are saved in your tool. The tool is the actual window that you're looking at here. So right in this particular workspace, I have two tools. I have a screener tool and a details tool. All of your settings are always going to be saved to your specific tool. So let me demonstrate that here. Right here, we have Neuro, and we have the 9 EMA line on. If I change this to any other stock, it keeps that 9 EMA line on. However, if I close the details tool, and then I re-add the details tool, and we'll use Neuro as an example, and I go back to the chart, that indicator has been cleared off because it's only saving to the specific instance of the tool. When you close the tool, it's gone. Now, what I can do actually, is I can actually do exactly what Jonathan said. I can simply go back to the layouts menu. I saved this one as demo. Let's go ahead and click on load. And what it's going to do is it's going to load all of those settings that you saved. So a layout consists of tools, a layout consists of workspaces. Workspaces consist of tools. Tools contain your saved settings. So when you save a layout, you save everything. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and close this. Now I've gone ahead and it actually has Neuro and the 200 EMA colored the way that I colored it, and the thickness the way that I had it set. So again, it saved the filters in the screener. So again, key point here is that if you don't use the layouts menu, your data is saved in your browser's local storage. And this is great for like day-to-day use. Like I put on, like in my example here on Screener, I was actually demonstrating this for somebody else. I put this filter on, I closed Pro when I went to sleep at night, and then when I loaded it back up, it loaded it up there because it was saved in my browser's local storage. If your local storage gets cleared for any reason, whether you're clearing cookies for a problem, or they get cleared by some other program, or you do like a cleanup function on your computer, it may clear all that stuff out. And if it does, you're going to lose all of your workspaces. But that's exactly why you want to have it saved in the layouts menu, because instead of setting everything back up, you can simply go to that menu and load that layout. And it takes, 10 seconds instead of 10 minutes or even longer, depending on what you have set up.
Yeah, really good question from Darren here in the chat. Based on setting up a stop limit when a stock is declining and it's still above your stop price, what's the best strategy here? And let's see, why the limit below the stop price is important and why.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me take the first part of that here. The first part of that is actually, first of all, I don't actually, in my own personal trading, and this is not necessarily the right way to do this, this is just the way that I've been most successful. In my own trading, I tend not to use a mechanical stop. And what I mean by that is that I don't actually place the order in my trading platform as soon as I place the trade. I know it mentally. I know it upstairs. I know what I'm looking for. And that's part of me managing my positions. But I don't actually place that order in the broker. And there's two reasons for that. Number one, and perhaps most importantly, stops can absolutely get flushed out. And if a stock is making a violent move, if you have a stop that's right near a support or a resistance line, and the stock starts moving towards that line for whatever the reason is, either whether it be upside or downside, it doesn't matter. It's quite possible that the stock goes right to your stop, executes your stop, and then bounces right back. So for me, I don't want that to happen to me, because in some cases, I understand that a stock might have a knee-jerk reaction to a news release. Or maybe there's a chat room out there that's talking about the stock, or maybe there's a rumor floating around on Twitter that's causing this stock to move. When you're in the regular session, when the volume is at its, when there's volume in the actual regular session, a lot of the times cooler heads prevail, and things like this, pops and drops like this, are often short-lived. I don't want my trade to blow up just because I set a very, very tight stop and my stop got flushed out. If I believe in my position, if I believe in the thesis of my trade plan, then I want to see that plan play out. If my plan is absolutely under no circumstance am I going to hold the stock when it drops below level XYZ, okay, fine. But oftentimes that's not what my plan is. My plan will be something like, did the business fundamentals change? Did something happen at the company that is changing the way that this plan? So let's use Apple for an example, because it's easy to understand. If Apple stopped selling the iPhone, I would sell my Apple stock. Because for me, the iPhone is incredibly important, and it actually leads to a lot of Apple's other revenue streams. Everyone uses a smartphone nowadays. I don't see those ever really declining. Even if new phone sales aren't growing, people are still going to be replacing those phones. And they're still going to be spending money at the App Store on videos or apps or games or whatever the case is. If Apple comes out tomorrow and says, you know what, we're done with this whole phone thing, I'm not selling phones anymore, I'm hitting the sell button. And you're going to see the price drop if that's the case. Now, I'm using an extreme hypothetical example here in order to illustrate the point, but the point itself is the same. So when it comes to actual stops, my goal is to make sure that I have a mental plan. What do I do if X happens? And I have that plan for upside, and I have that plan for downside. And so that's why I actually don't set them in the broker. Now, I feel like there was another part to that question that I'm now forgetting.
It's like 5 items up on the chat from the panelist side.
Okay.
It's from Darren.
From Darren. Okay, based on the settings of stop limit, when a stock is declining and when it's still above your stop price, what is the best strategy here, and why the limit order below the stop price is important? Okay, so for example, I think what you're saying is let's say my stop is 350 on a particular stock. You can set your stop at 350, and then you can set your limit order at 330. That's actually a really good plan, and I'm glad that you brought that up. That's something that you can actually do when you're talking about flow. And so if you set your order up that way, effectively what you're saying is Place this order when this condition is met. So in this case, we're talking about a stop. So let's say that the stock actually hits 350. Let's say it's trading up around 5, and it starts to sell off and it hits 350. Your trading platform is going to say, I have a rule set up. When this stock hits 350, I'm going to place a limit order at 330. The reason that you do that is because if stock is moving quickly, if you had your limit order right at 350, there's a possibility that that order gets placed, but then never gets filled because the price drops beneath that. If you have that limit, or if you have the stop at 350 and the limit order getting placed at 330, you've actually given yourself a 20-cent window where you're more likely for that stop to actually get filled. That's a great suggestion, and that's absolutely something that you can use on a low float stock trading strategy. However, again, I must stress, it's not always going to work. And one of the other things that you can do is you can actually set up a stop that has a market order. So the result would be when the stock hits 350 on the downside, place a market order to sell the shares. That might guarantee that you get filled because market orders guarantee that you get filled, but that doesn't guarantee you a price. And if that stock is moving very quickly and on very, very light volume, it's possible that although you had a stop at 350, your order might actually get filled at 330 or even lower than that, 3 in some, there's no way to actually predict that. So that's why, for me, I always try to have a mental stop, and I try to watch what the stock is doing. I try to watch the actual price action itself and then react to that. And what I've discovered in my career is that when I have control of my emotions, it's a lot easier for me to react. I react in a more mechanical manner because I'm not letting my emotions toy with me. That's why having a plan from the beginning is so important. If I go into a trade and I say, it's okay if I lose $200 here, or whatever the value is, and that trade starts to go against me, I'm not upset. I'm not panicking if I'm down $100 or $150. When I get to my max loss, I'm out of the trade. That's it. That's just how it goes. This is all why having a trading plan is super important. That was a great question, though, Darren. I hope I answered that for you.
Yeah, thank you, Darren, and thank you, Ryan. There's a couple related questions here, and feel free to push this off until later if you wanted to. But basically, there's one on, let's see, where was this? This one was also from Darren. Do you prefer another tool for intraday trading analysis for 1 minute scanning analysis? And then there's another one farther up that I think everyone can see because it was posted to attendees as well. B says, Benzinga is great in pre-market scanning. I get everything I need, can live without a column and filter for float. Just find it in the company's details. What is missing is a good intraday momentum scanner. I can't program the screener or signals to find stocks breaking daily highs, previous day close, 52-week highs, breaking previous 1 hour highs, stocks that consolidated for an hour and breaking for new highs, or for a stock breaking on high volume and has low float.
Okay, so what you're referring to is an actual in-depth scanner. Keep in mind that when Pro was developed and released, it is essentially a news feed, not a scanner. Now, we went ahead and added in other tools because they were important to the traders that were actually following the news. And so I understand exactly what it is that you're asking for. What I would say is that as we continue to evolve this platform, you're going to see more and more of those scanning capabilities added. And in some cases, we actually have 2 scanners. So we've got the screener right here that we've showed you how to find low float stocks. By the way, I just wanted to show you on this Neurostock. It looks like, if we go back to the daily here, it looks like on the daily chart here that this 200 EMA is acting as resistance. Every time the stock seems to go up and test it, even if it breaches it a little bit, it actually sells off beneath that. So something to keep in mind, 200 EMA on that. Now, back to the scanner discussion. We do have this. This is one of the scanners that we have, which is the screener. And we also have the mover scanner. So the question about how do you find things on an intraday basis, the scanner that I use for that is, in fact, the mover scanner. And while I don't have these very specific 1 minute scan that you were referring to, one of the things that I end up doing, like, for example, when I step away for lunch, and I come back to my desk, the first thing that I do is I come into movers and I click this period. I change this to 15 minutes. And what this does is this shows me what stocks are doing over the past 15 minutes. And I can actually then review this list and see if there's something here that sticks out. And I do something very similar to the example that we just had in the screener. I actually have the chart loaded up right next to it, and it allows me to review the chart. Now, and here I actually have the 9 EMA because I use the 9 EMA a lot for intraday analysis. I want to know how this is actually reacting to the 9 EMA. I'll also use VWAP, or volume weighted average price, for that. I'm actually going to do another webinar this on Friday where we're going to discuss VWAP. So if you're interested in that, be sure to sign up for that. The question about the intraday scanner, you have a very, very specific request, and that is designed for a scanner. So right now, because of the specificity of that request, we're not able to actually meet that request with the tools that we have. However, like I said, we are absolutely changing these tools to help add functionality, adding things like moving average crosses. So alert me when stocks of particular float and a particular price have a 50-day moving average cross through the 200-day moving average. These are different types of things we're looking to add. For the movers, we're looking to add some shorter periods here. So maybe you can actually have movers up, have a shorter period, and you'll see this list change as things happen in the market. So I hope that answers your question. Again,
and just
yeah.
Sorry, just a quick note here, guys. So there's obviously some very powerful tools out there, and if you have specific use cases that you're looking for that you can't find right now, you would do a huge benefit for yourself and for all of us here if you would click on that feedback button in the upper right corner. It's like a little exclamation point inside of a chat box, and you can throw in your name, email, whatever you're looking for, and then if it's over email as well, you could email VIP accounts and even send us a screenshot of like similar examples of what you're looking for. That goes to our entire product team, and we review those on a weekly basis. So definitely keep us up to date on things like that as we continue to develop our product roadmap.
Great, exactly right, Jonathan. Great call on that. And in fact, this movers tool is the result of someone's feedback. Someone said something very similar to what you were asking. They were like, the news is great, the squawk is great, but I'd really like it if there was some feature that allowed me to just really quickly see what's going up and down throughout the course of the day. And we had several requests for that via the feedback channel. So our developers, when they were planning the next course of action, they said, look, a lot of our users are asking for this type of functionality. What can we do? And the result was the movers scanner here. And the thing that I like about this, even though it doesn't meet the specific things that you were asking about, the thing that I like about this is that it's incredibly easy to use. I use Thinkorswim as my broker. They have an incredibly robust scanner that allows you to do exactly what it is that you're talking about. But it's quite difficult to use, takes a lot of time to set up, and requires a lot of tweaking. For me, using the movers tool is very straightforward and very simple. I literally just load this up, and the way that I do this in the morning, I load this up, I click on gainers, I click on pre-market for the session because I want to know what's moving in the pre-market, and then I click on session here for the period filter because I want to know what's moving across the entire pre-market session. Now I have a list of that. Now I can actually go through each one of these tickers. I can review the chart. I can actually click back over to the news pane. In this particular case here, we actually have a banner at the top that says, why is it moving? And this is telling me exactly why this stock was up 69% in the pre-market. They're trading higher after they recorded a Q1 EPS and sales were up year over year. All right, so there you go. So there's a number of different ways that you can use this. We're all about trying to give you the tools that it is that you need. So as Jonathan said, if we don't have it, let us know. The more specific you are, the better it is for us, and the more accurate we can actually design that tool.
Yeah,
so,
and sorry, go ahead. Well, just for as far as intraday trading or even in the pre-market, this right here, this is one of my favorite workspaces. Just very simply, give me the mover scanner and the details tool. Yep. And as someone mentioned in the chat earlier, you do have access to the float under the key data points or on the overview tab inside of the details tool. So you can very quickly, go through some of these big movers. A lot of them are going to be the lower float or at least smaller price per share stocks. And you can just confirm that very briefly by taking a look at those key data points. Then you can take a glance at the chart or the more in-depth chart available as well as seeing what types of news catalysts are driving that volatility. So this right here, what we're looking at, is a great setup for either pre-market or intraday analysis.
Absolutely. And one of the other things that you can do here from the details tool is if you are into like reviewing the financials, you can do that. We've got all of those financial reports available. And if you notice that something is really making a move, you can actually click on the peers tab. And you can find similar companies, and maybe one of these companies is going to be affected. Maybe because CPS Technologies released good earnings, someone else in the same sector might also have better than expected earnings. And you can actually review that right here and actually plan your next trade from this. So, Jonathan, I share your view on this. This is one of my favorite workspaces. It's literally the second one in my list here because I use it so often, and it's just these two tools. And just the power of combining these two tools makes it very, very easy for me to find what's going on.
Cool.
Right?
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, I was actually going to move us over to what's got me so excited today on the recent deployment that we've made on our options calendar. But if there's something you want to finish off here, let's go ahead and do
that. So we've only got 15 minutes left, and this new options calendar is so amazing. So for people who were asking about where to find analyst ratings, like upgrades and downgrades, or like we're in earnings season. So if you want an earnings workspace, just shoot me an email at onboarding@benzinga.com or at vipaccounts@benzinga.com. And I do group demos in addition to these webinars a few times a week. I can send you a quick recording, or actually Ryan also has a video curriculum that he developed that I can send to you. So you name it, it's there, probably in the details tool or in the calendar tool, where you can find, or actually in the news feed or the calendar tool, are where you can find a lot of these types of data points.
We also, just to add to that, we also have a help site that has a whole bunch of different videos on how you can actually create specific things. So right down here in the pro tip videos section, we have a video that shows you how to set up the SEC workspace.
Yep.
We have another video that shows you how to find profitable high growth stocks. And so that we have a ton of content available to you on the help site that may help you. But as Jonathan mentioned, both him and I are available to help you out for a more specific request. So great call there. But let's go over to this options thing, because this is so. To me, this is so exciting. It's just like, this is exactly what I'm looking for. So one of the things that we actually offer here, excuse me, I'm sorry. One of the things we offer here is we have an unusual options activity signal. This is an add-on to the essential package. This was developed at a customer's request after we actually put this platform together. And in order to do this, we actually had to purchase more market data. So we had to make it an add-on instead of including it in the essential package. Now, what this signal does is this is a real-time update on different things that are happening in the market. These are different transactions that take place in the market. And you're updated here in real time as they happen. We also have this unusual options, the exact same data laid out in a calendar format. And the reason that this is so exciting is because we recently added a whole bunch of columns to make your life easier and more enjoyable. Some of the columns that we added are things like days to expiration, how big the trade was, how many trades took place. We also have a sentiment indicator here that is telling you if this trade is bullish or bearish based on where the transaction actually took place in relation to the bid or the ask. We can also tell you if it's a sweep or if it's just a regular trade, and you also have the ability to monitor the volume over the open interest. So you have you have a whole bunch of different, let me move us to the other side of the screen here. You have a whole bunch of different columns here, and you can set this up into any You can find the information that's important to you and then set it up any way that you like. And what's great about this is you can actually filter this. While you can't filter the option signal, remember, that's something that's running on the back end. That's a piece of code that's running on the back end. There's no way to actually filter that particular code at this time. But what you can do is you can actually filter the results. So if, let's say, for example, I'm looking at this chart, there's a lot of data here. Let's say, for example, you know what? I only want to see calls. I don't want to see puts. So what I can do here is I can actually go to the put call column and I can unselect puts. The result now is it's only going to show me calls. Okay, well, that's great. You can see here that you have there's little symbol next to it will denote that you have an active filter applied. So you don't actually have to click into all of these to see if there's a filter. This little symbol here is alerting you that, hey, you have a filter set up on put call. I removed the put from it. One of the other things that you can do here is, let's say, for example, I'm interested in things that have a high volume compared to its open interest. So what I'm talking about is the volume to open interest ratio. So let's expand that. I want to say I want to have a volume over open interest greater than 10. Okay, so I went ahead and typed that in here, and now look at that list. That entire list of data has now been truncated down to a very much more manageable. And as new transactions that come in that meet this requirement, it will actually update as a new row here. So this can actually be very, very helpful in planning a trade. Looking back on the history, you can see here that I've got a date selector here. So I'm actually only viewing the options from today. The other thing is I can filter this calendar by a watch list. So if I only want to see options transactions that apply to stocks that I either already own or stocks that I'm watching on a regular basis, I can do that. And now we've actually added a number of columns that you can actually see, like, for example, the days to expiration here and the actual price of the contract. So this particular contract here cost 90 cents. There were 2 trades that made up 1,999 contracts of volume. And it has a volume, and the total amount, the total price of the trade, the total amount of money used to execute this trade was $180,000. And so you can actually set this up to kind of review whatever it is that you're looking for. And now that we've added more columns, there's actually more options available to you. So if you don't trade options, you can actually still use this. So let me go ahead and go back in here. And let's take the put call. Let's go ahead and put puts back in here. And now let's talk about the sentiment column here. The sentiment column is a sentiment on the actual stock. It's not necessarily the options. So although this says bullish, that doesn't necessarily mean go buy the 37.50 put on HDB. That's not what this means. What this means is that this particular transaction has a bullish sentiment. So again, one of the charts that is available to you, let me go back into the help site here. I had this on another tab here. I'm actually just going to type in option in the search bar, and then I'm going to click on how do I understand the option alerts. This is a great resource, and even though I do this every single day, I still consult this chart to make sure that I'm doing it correctly. So you can see here that puts at the bid refer to a bullish indication. So let's back that up a little bit and think about this example. If there's a trader that has a whole bunch of puts on a stock, they have that position because they believe that the stock price is going to go lower or depreciate, excuse me. So you buy puts in order to try and make money off of that movement. Well, let's say that this whole bunch of puts is actually sold at the bid. What that's saying is that a trader that had this decided, you know what? I don't want my order to be filled at the ask. I don't really care about the price. I just want to get out of this position. All right. I want to hit bids. I want to sell this position. I want to get out of here. Why would you want to get out of a put position quickly? Because you believe that is because you believe that the stock is going to go up. Thus, that particular transaction is bullish. So let's go back to this example here. So we have this put sale that's bullish here. So we can determine that someone unloaded the $140,000 worth of put contracts, and we can surmise that this is because they believe that this stock is going to go up. Maybe their trading plan it looks like it's not going to come to fruition. Maybe there's a piece of news that just hit about this particular stock. So there's a number of different things in here that you can actually use to your advantage. And while you can't filter the option signal in the signals menu, you can apply filters in the calendar menu. And the calendar here is actually going to give you a bunch more data that you can use to set up your next trade. So Jonathan, like I was saying, this is literally like, I have been waiting for this, especially the total trade value. I get asked about that a lot. People look at these signals here and they think, well, yeah, sure, I can manually do this. I can take 53 cents times 100 and then times that by 1010 and get the value, but you don't necessarily want to have to continually do that math. So now in the calendar here, this is just done for you. The software is actually doing the mathematical calculation for you so that you don't have to, saving you time so you can spend more of your energy focusing on your trade or getting in and out of your trade or whatever the case may be.
Absolutely. So, and I was just talking with Tom, one of our developers who did a lot of the work on this, and he confirmed that many of these data points will be available on the Signals tool. So stay tuned, because we're going to keep improving the Signals tool and adding filters so that in the future you could have that same functionality in that real-time scanner for the option activity. Absolutely. And by the way, there was a question. Someone wanted to see again, how exactly do we get to this workspace? So this is two tools here. The one on the left-hand side would be Signals. The one on the right-hand side is Calendar. And there's actually 13 different calendars within the Calendar tool. So you'll see, you have that radio tower symbol for Signals, also available on your left-hand toolbar. And then you also have the Calendar tool, third from the top there. Then right now it's on the earnings calendar. You click on that drop down there for all of those different available options, and unusual options activity is at the very bottom. And so that's how you get to this workspace.
Absolutely. And just to finish that up here, over here on the Signals tool, the default is going to be price spike. But if I'm setting up something for options, I can just turn price spike off, turn option activity on, and now I have this layout created. Now, what I did is I actually saved this as a workspace because this is something that I use all the time. So it's very easy for me. Like, let's say I wake up in the morning and I want to check out what's going on in the pre-market. And then when the regular session opens, I go ahead and I click on regular so I can watch what's moving across the regular session. But let's say I very quickly want to go check out what's going on in the options market. I can just click on my options activity workspace and flip right to it. So I built these workspaces based on what I'm going to use it for. And so when I was building this one, I wanted the Signals tool so that I can get all of the data in real time. And then I also want to put the calendar right next to it so that I can either compare or use the filters that we were talking about.
Absolutely. And it looks like we have 3 minutes here until the top of the hour, Ryan. So what else would you like to cover in those 3 minutes?
Well, I think that this is pretty good. We've done a lot of information here. I think one of the tools that we should mention that goes along very well with both the options calendar and also the screener used to find low float stocks, amongst other things, is the actual Squawk tool. And the reason that I'm bringing this up is because the Squawk tool is very, very easy to use. All you have to do is mouse over the icon, and you have a couple of options here. You have a blue play button and a mute option. You can see that the status says that it's stopped. If I click the play button, it will go ahead and make a connection to the Squawk server. When it says connected, waiting for audio, that means that I'm successfully connected to the Squawk server, and I'm waiting for news to be read. And this is different from radio in the sense that it's not a 24/7 broadcast. There's going to be times where you don't hear anything. But as breaking news happens, or as the news breaks, it will go ahead and get read by our squawker. Now, our squawker is a 20-plus year market veteran. He has all types of different connections and ties to find this news as soon as it happens. And because that this is an audio feed, you can be looking at, you notice here, I don't have a news feed here. I just have the signals tool and I just have the calendar, but if there's a big piece of news and it gets read by the squawker, I can still be alerted to that even without having the tool available. Maybe the squawker will also read unusual options trades. So maybe he reads one of the trades about, this bullish trade in the SPY for this particular put sale. I'm just spitballing here, just coming up with an example, but this actually runs in the background. There's no way to filter it. There's no way to pick and choose. It's an all or nothing tool. You either turn it on or you turn it off. So this pairs very well with some of the other tools in the platform because it actually takes up no screen real estate. And you can actually act on this a lot quicker. I don't actually have to read out lines of text. I can actually hear them being spoken and then react to it in real time.
Awesome. Yeah, the Squawk tool is a huge, huge benefit for so many of our users. I mean, many people subscribe to Benzinga Pro just for access to that Squawk. And there's a bunch of other tools that we weren't able to get to today. So definitely check out the other tutorials. We've got a chat, a very active, valuable chat. Tons of features being rolled out on a weekly or monthly basis. So the best is yet to come here. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Thank you, Ryan, for your in-depth explanations on how to trade low float stocks, what to look for, how to find the important data points within Benzinga Pro. It was fantastic being here with you today.
Yeah, it really was great. And thank you for joining us. I love bringing the power to the people. I love having these tools available and putting them in the hands of a retail trader so they can make their own dreams come true. That's why I got involved in the market. That's why I was a customer of Benzinga. There's your squawk, by the way. Let me go ahead and mute that for the video here. But this tool has been a tool in my arsenal for years, and I liked it so much and wanted to be a part of bringing these features to you so much that I ended up working here as well. So I'm happy to help. Jonathan, thank you very much for joining us, and until next time, Zingers, happy trading.